Hello again, everyone. This is Zombie Kids Rule, and it's time for another RPG Maker MZ tutorial. It looks like the more people gave a thumbs up to the teaser about randomly determining information about a treasure chest. It was pretty close, but I'm going to go ahead and do the breakout for this one, the how to randomly determine information about a treasure chest using a common event, and then essentially storing the information in an array that you can then extract that information anytime you need to for that specific chest. And basically, you can have as many chests as you want that do this same thing, and each time you interact with a chest, it will remember what was previously determined for its information, its values. I am trying to remake this video again, so I recorded the entire thing. It was a little over an hour, and when I was watching it for quality control, I caught a mistake. I didn't catch it when I was recording the video, but I caught it in reviewing it, and I had to go back, and turns out I had forgotten to put a variable in one spot, and that made it not work. I mean, it worked, but it didn't do exactly what it was supposed to do. So I had to go back and insert in that variable. So I'll just throw my caveats out there. I have said in the past, I'm not updating quite as often, simply because I don't have as much time where I can record in a quiet setting. I have been focusing more on RPG Maker recently, and hopefully that will continue. I don't claim to be an expert. I've only been doing this a little over a year, on again, off again, brand new, other than that, to RPG Maker stuff. No programming experience, so everything I'm doing is stuff I have been able to learn from tutorials and from exploring and just trying things and asking questions. So, I don't claim to be an expert. What I show are things that I've been able to build and test, and they seem to work. They may not be the most efficient way to do it. They may not be the best way to do it. I'm not using plugins except for a couple that come as a default. I've been using those recently because they greatly expand what I can do. But again, just because I show something now doesn't mean that it's going to be the same thing I do later on as I learn and progress. I'm just trying to put this out there where these are things that I've thought I can do. I've done it, and I hope it helps other people as they're learning and they're exploring and they're trying to increase their knowledge and figure out how they want to do their stuff. I don't do fancy maps right now. I am focused solely on functionality. How do things work? What can I build? What can I make work that I might want to use in some future game? The mapping, the graphics, all the structure of the database for me, that comes later. Right now, I'm just testing functionality. I can't remember if there's another caveat or not, but basically, we'll let that lie for now. I will show this one more time. I did make a couple tweaks. I don't think they were terribly substantive, but unlike the other teaser where I did add some new functionality to it. So I'm going to click on this chest, and what it's going to do is it's going to tell me a bunch of stuff about this chest. And, no, I wouldn't do this in a game. I wouldn't show this to the player. This is just for testing purposes. So let's see. It was randomly determined that this was a tiny, superior, platinum, opulent chest. The chest is not locked, so it has no types of locks on it. But it has both a mechanical and a magical trap. So it is trapped. So all the information about the lock will be none. And then the information about the trap, so the mechanical trap is acid spray and it's intricate. That means it's one of the highest levels. And then the magical trap is, I think I said mechanical. Magical trap is firebomb and it's complex. And then the hit points of this particular chest are 64. That's used, that would be for future use if you wanted to allow the player to try to break it open, right? Just bash it and do damage. So I'm gonna do it again, and all those values should be the same. So again, tiny, superior, platinum, opulent, not locked, mechanical, magical, none there. Acid spray, intricate, firebomb, complex, 64. Yeah, so it's exactly the same. So I go down here, I do another chest, and now the data has changed. It's still tiny, but now magnificent, lead, worn chest. It has both a mechanical and a magical lock, and both a mechanical and magical trap. Holy crap! It better be protecting something really good. The mechanical lock is inferior and very weak, so that's not too bad. The magical lock is elaborate and very strong. Oh dear. And then the mechanical trap is sleep dart complex, and then the magical trap is firebomb elaborate. So, so you know, with a result like this, if I was building this in my game, this had better have something really, really good in it, and it better be found in a place that makes sense for a tiny chest to be that well protected. And it has 62 hit points. I'm going to look at it again. It should be exactly the same, which it is. All this is exactly the same. Perfect. Okay, now I'm going to go back up here and click on this one again, because this is where I figured out where I was missing a variable. And yep, okay, so that's good. The problem was this right here. I had forgotten this variable, and so the description wasn't changing. So that's opulent, not locked, magical. Yep, we did that. And acid spray, yeah, I remember that. So I'm going to go back down here, just double check it's not opulent, and it is not. It's worn chest. Okay, perfect. So I fixed that just by inserting a variable where it was supposed to go, which I had missed. Okay, so how does this work? So essentially, there's two events here which are almost duplicate. So once so if you like this, once you created one event, you can copy and paste this all over the place, and all you have to do is just change a very few small things, and it's good to go. So it uses the on map event for the chest, and then it calls a common event. So let's look at the chest first. So when you interact with this chest, again, this is just to test this particular functionality. So this is not like an opening chest where you get something from it and all this other stuff. It's just the graphic and no conditions up here on page 1. Same as character and action button, so you can interact with it. The first thing this does is it uses a control variable, which I used 341, chest 1. It is creating an array. So this is an array, and when you create it in the database, or I'm sorry, when you create it in the event, you just define your variable, and then in the script option, you put brackets, and then if it's empty brackets, it's an empty array, right? So with the brackets, you're creating an array. In this one, I knew the first two values that I wanted in the array, so I just plugged them in. This array is going to hold a mixture of numbers and string text, okay? So first thing it does is it creates an array for this chest, for this specific chest. Each chest you want to do this on would have its own array. So I'd have chest 1 array, chest 2 array, chest 3 array, etc. And it's going to store all of the information about that particular chest. So then what it's doing is it's calling a common event. Okay, so when you double click and right here on page 1, there's common event, and you just click on it and you tell it which common event it's going to call. This one's calling object determination chest, and I'm going to have a separate one for object determination door, or whatever I end up calling it, because I want to have the ability to do this with both chests and doors, because I want doors that can be locked and trapped, and you can force open, and you can try to bludgeon down and things like that. So we've got our array made. It's calling a common event that's going to go do a bunch of stuff. And then what's going to happen next is I'm just waiting 10 frames here. So 10/60ths of a second, 1/6 of a second, very short period of time. And that comet event will have done everything it needs to do. It's going to basically establish 27 pieces of information, 27 variables, I think. And then it's going to come back here, and in one script box, in one script command, you're going to essentially take all of the variables. These are all variables from 301, 303 all the way down to 329. You're going to take the value that is stored in those variables, and you are going to push it, dot push, to the array that you created. So this 341, this is the array. And you're going to do this all in one big long script. So, again, if I double click on page 3 of the event commands is the script option. I click that and I get to put all my stuff in here. Now, what I did was I typed, so I'll just edit this. I typed the first line, and then I just copied and pasted it a bunch of times, as many as I needed, because the array number doesn't change, and none of this changes except the variable number. And because I blocked off a chunk of variables to use for this, they are sequential. So I could just go right down through the list and change it 303, 304, 305, 306, 307, all the way down to 329. Now, the script that you want to use is, I've used this before. You've seen this in other ones of my tutorials if you watch them. $game capital variables dot value, and then in parentheses 341 dot push, and because that's pushing the value to the array, and then in parentheses, because this is what you're going to push there, or this is what you're telling it what it's going to put in the array, $game capital variables dot value, and parentheses again 303, and then your closing parentheses, which this parentheses goes with this parentheses, and then here's your set here, semicolon, so you can do it all over again. And so what this is basically saying, it's saying take the value of variable 303, push it, add it to the variable 341, which is an array, and it's going to put it one after the other. So it's adding it at the end of the array, right? So all these in sequential order are going to be added to this array. That's what this big chunk of script is doing. Then what I'm doing from here down to here is I am just using text boxes to show what's the value of the variables that were determined by the common event. So this is where it says UCA, and these are the text or the string descriptions that were determined, right? So the size and the, let's see, it goes size, and there's quality and material and basically flavor text. And this is the actual, this is not from the array, this is from the variables that were used by the common event. Then this is the one where it says the chest, and then this is where it says either is not locked or is locked, or has a mechanical lock. This is the one that says whether it is trapped, has a mechanical trap, magic trap, or both. Again, just using the variables, the value stored in the variables. Then it goes into this section where it says, okay, if there's a mechanical lock, it's using the variable to say what the level is, what the strength is. If there's a magic lock, what's the level, what's the strength. And then it does the same thing for traps. If there's a mechanical trap, what's the type, meaning what's the name of it, what's the level of it, and then magic trap, again, what's the type, what's the level, and then it shows the hit points. So again, this is using the variables that are used in the common event. So I know when I test it what the common event said these were, and in theory it's supposed to be putting this in the array. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to test that on page 2. So at the end of this, once it tells you what it did, we're going to use Control Self Switch A. We're going to turn on Control Self Switch A, which is going to allow us to advance to page 2. So Self Switch A is the condition. So this will be the highest page where the conditions are met. None of this changed down here. And what's going to happen is again, just for testing purposes, basically I said, do you want to hear about the chest again? Yes or no? When no, then basically, okay, just look again if you want a reminder. When yes, now it has to do something. And what this is doing is, in the previous page, all of the information from the common event was stored in the array. And the theory is that you walk away from the chest and you go do your thing. Maybe you interact with another chest, which is going to basically reuse these variables. All of these variables in this list are reused over and over and over again. They're reused in the common event, and then they're reused in, for instance, this page of the chest event, so that you can extract the values from the array, and it only needs to be remembered for as long as you're in this event. That's as long as it needs to be remembered. Then it can be overwritten again. So what's happening here is the presumption is some of this data may have changed because you clicked on another chest. And so now what it's doing is it's going through and it's taking each variable that was used in the common event, or I should say, it's taking roughly half of the variables that are used in the common event, and it's extracting the value that we saved in the array. So, and what I will just note here is that each one of these, I guess, pieces of information has usually both a number associated with it and then the text. So there's a number and then a corresponding text. And I did that because when I pre-planned what I wanted to do with these chest and doors, I wasn't exactly sure what's going to be the easiest to use in the next stage. Like when I'm building the master event for, okay, how are we going to try to pick these locks? How are we going to try to disarm these traps? How are we going to, are we going to force open the chest or door? Are we going to try to bludgeon it down and just do raw damage? Are we going to inspect it first and see if we can figure out information? Are we going to cast a spell on it? And I wasn't exactly sure. My feeling is that using the numbers that are associated with the text is going to be actually easier for some steps. So when I designed the array and I built the common event, pretty much almost each one of these is going to have a number, like object size number or value number, and then the object size text that goes along with it. Now, in reality, I didn't do it here. If you look down through the list, you're going to see text, 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 text. So this is all the string values, right? And what you would really have to do is you would most likely want to also extract from the array the numbers as well, right? And it's not hard. All I would have to do is right here where it says it's between size and quality of text. I know that there is a quality value number in there. So what I would do is I would just simply copy this, and then I would paste it, and then I would take the one. So now I have 2 5s here, right? I would take this and I would say, you know what? I want this to be the number instead. So I'm going to edit it. I'm going to go over here. I know they're all in the 300s. So I want the quality number, object quality number instead of text. Okay, so I change that. And then I'm going to change this to a 4 because that's the position in the array where that value is stored. I know it is. And so now, just by doing that quickly and easily, I don't have just the object quality text, I have the object quality number too. And in reality, you would want both the numbers and the texts to be returned from the array, because again, until I build it, I don't know what I need for the next step. So in reality, I would add all of these numbers as well. I just didn't do that here because I'm not actively using them for this test. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. But in reality, this list would be longer, and it would pretty much be every value from the array. It's being extracted so that I can use whatever I need while I'm interacting with this chest. So it's very simple the way this works. I just take the variable that was originally used, in this instance, variable 304, object size text, and then I'm going to essentially set it to $game capital variables dot value, in parentheses 341. That's my array. That's the array I created. And in brackets, it's this number correlates to the position in the array. So this is it's position 3, but in reality, it's the 4th position, because in the array, you start counting the positions at 0. Okay, so over here, this array here, this is position 0. This is position 1. Okay, and so again, that's all this is doing. And the text just happened to go line up, skipping, right? So 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15. And so I'm extracting all that information. And the way I built this was I just did the first one, and then I copied and pasted it a bunch of times, and then I just changed the variable name, right? Whatever the variable I needed, which was basically going up, skipping one and then skipping one and skipping one. And then I just changed the position of the value in the array. And then I got all of these, okay? And then once it does that, once it extracts from the array, I just had it repeat what it was doing in the first tab, because once again, I wanted to show me the values of those variables once they've pulled it from the array. And that tells me if it's doing what I expect it to do. And then it just ends. And I'll just say this again. In reality, in a game, I wouldn't show the player all this information. They would have to look at the chest, right? They would have to visually inspect the chest. They would have to inspect it for, say, traps and locks to find out what information they could get out of it. They might have to cast a spell, whatever. So I wouldn't just give them this information. I built it this way so that I can test to make sure it's doing what I thought it would do, and to make sure it's doing what I want it to do. So those are these 2 pages of the chest. Okay, so create an array, and I just put the first 2 values in the array, because those are not being randomly determined. 1 is chest, 2 is door. Well, this is a chest event, so it's automatically set to 1 and chest. Calling a common event to do all the work, then coming back, taking all the variables that were determined by the common event, and pushing it into the array in sequential order, and then showing me, what did you do, right? What did you actually do? What were the values? What values were returned, so I can check it out and test it. Turn on a self switch, and then come back and look at it again and extract the values of those that information from the array 341, and put it back into the reusable variables. That, again, these variables can be reused for every single chest, and it's reused by the common event every single time. So that is the event on the map, right? The chest event. And if we look at this one, it is essentially almost identical. The only difference is that the array that you create, so instead of 341 chest 1, this variable is named 342 chest 2. Same content, 1 and chest, because that's what this is. Still calls the same common event. Common event does all its work. And the only thing that changed with this whole script is these variables didn't change. the array number changed, 342. So I just had to go in and edit each one of these. Boom, 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 boom. Changed it. And if I wanted to make another chest, I would just copy and paste the event. And then I'd go in and I would, again, use a different variable for the array, change that number, and that part's done. Whoops, sorry. And this part all stayed the same. And then on page 2, the only thing that changed here, all of these variable numbers stayed the same. It was just the array value, right? The variable for the array changed. All the positions stayed the same. 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. All those stayed the same. It was just the value of the variable for the array that changed. And then the rest of it stayed the same. So once you build the first one, you can copy and paste that anywhere you want and just change a few things and you're good to go. So now what about the common event? So the common event, let's see, is object determination. Now, the first thing I did, because there was a lot of information here, is I'm trying to get better at using comments. So I can go back and look and remember what I did, and more importantly, in this one, what are the values that are available for the information. So first, comments using the event command, right? So when I'm here, if I double click, I'm in event commands. Comment is right here, but it's limited, right? You can only have but so many rows. So I used multiple comments. This first row here, okay, so I'm gonna go back and click down here. The first row here are the positions in the array. So in position 0 of the array, object type number 1 or 2. In position number 1, right, object type text is either chest or door. These are the values that are possible. Those are the two things I set manually. And then in the second position of the array, object size number, it's a value of 1 to 6. And what does that mean? Well, the object size text that goes along with the number, if it's a 1, it's tiny. If it's a 2, it's small. 3, medium size. Large, extra large, gigantic. And I'm using both of these because, again, my suspicions are that when I'm doing the next part of this, of interacting with the chest and trying to do things with it, I'm thinking it's going to be easier to use the number value of different things than it is the text value. The text value is more along the line for what I'm showing the player versus the number value behind the scenes, what I'm using for conditional branches or whatever. So then after it does the size, it goes to quality. What's the quality of the object? So object quality number is 1 through 6. The object quality text correlating to those is shoddy, inferior, common, fine, superior, magnificent. So now I should just say this. I just brainstormed these really quickly for the testing of the event, trying to see how it would work. You could obviously have many more sizes or less sizes. You could have different text for it. Whatever makes sense for you, whatever you like, right? But, this is where it's limited by how much time you're willing to put into it, how much imagination you bring to it. So after quality, we have material, object material number, and object material text. I put 1 through 10 because I tried to brainstorm what chests might you see in a fantasy type game. Wood being the default. And then you could have a lead chest, a silver chest, gold, copper, brass, bronze, platinum, iron, stone. You could make up, metals or whatever. Okay. You could have an all crystal chest. It all depends on you. So you could increase this, decrease this, whatever you want. Then, so we've got size, quality, material. Now we're going to do object flavor, just flavor text. What do you want to add as a description? 1 through 6 for testing purposes. I picked worn, plain, moss-covered, dusty, ornate, opulent. You could have 20 of these if you wanted to. You could have more than one flavor text, right? If you wanted to pre-plan it in your array, you could have object flavor number 1, number 2, number 3, text 1, text 2, text 3, and that way you could increase the amount of description, right, that you have in your chests or doors. Battered, right? Beaten, whatever, who knows? So you got your flavor text. Then it gets into the locks and traps. So in position 10, right? I'm not going to highlight these each time, but in position 10 of the array, you see lock value number and lock value text. So it's going to have a value of 0 to 3. And I tried to be consistent, thinking that 0 would mean it's null, right? It's nil, or just it's not there. So if it's 0, it's unlocked. If it's 1, it has a mechanical lock. If it's 2, it has a magic lock. And if it's 3, it has both a mechanical and a magical lock. And then after you do the lock, I did the trap value number and trap value text, 0 to 3. Again, same thing. Not trapped, mechanical, mechanical, and magic. Then you have to go, okay, well, once we've figured that part out, we need to go, well, trap mechanical type, right? Trap mech type text. To me, it didn't make any sense for locks to have a type. They could have a level, they could have a strength, but not necessarily a type. So I skipped over that. Now maybe you come up with something different and say, I want lock types that don't have to do with level and don't have to do with strength. Okay, cool. You can just add it in, right? This is where your pre-planning comes in. So for the trap, I just randomly came up with a few, right? In my game, I would have a bunch more than this. And I would incorporate this different ways. But for now, I did 0 through 3, 0 meaning none, and then poison needle, sleep dart, acid spray, right? Things that could be triggered mechanically, right? Through gears and whatever. Then I did the same thing with magic. Trap magic type number and trap magic type text. 0 to 3, none, and then just firebomb, ice bomb, acid bomb. There, again, for me, I would have a ton. I would make a whole bunch of them for variety. So then once I get the type down, I went ahead and said, okay, well, I need to now know the level of the lock, both mechanical if it has one, and magic if it has one. So lock, level, mechanical, number, and lock, level, mechanical, text. 0 to 6. And again, you could come up with more or less. It's up to you. I just brainstormed none, inferior, common, complex, superior, elaborate, intricate. And then with the magic version of it, I did the exact same thing. 0 to 6, same description. And then when it came to, so those are the locks. And then when it came to trap level mechanical number and trap level mechanical text, and then trap level magic number and trap level magic text, it uses the exact same thing. 0 to 6 and same descriptor words, none, inferior, common, complex, superior, elaborate, intricate. And now if you go back, you can refresh your memory, right? And I had to come back to this when I was building down below to remember. So now I've got all my lock information and I've got all my trap information. So next it was, okay, I need to know how strong the lock is, both mechanical and magical, because maybe I want to let them pry it open, right? Use brute strength, do a strength check to see if they can pry open the chest. So I have lock, strength, mechanical, text, lock, strength, magic text. And it goes from none, very weak, sturdy, strong, very strong, and mighty. Now, these ones don't have a number associated with them. Why? Originally, I designed it did have a number, and then I removed it because I said, to me, it makes more sense that you would link the text for the strength to the level of the lock, right? To me, it didn't make sense to have a level 1 lock that was then mighty, a mighty level 1 lock, right? Versus a very weak level 1 lock. To me, it just made more sense to say if it's a level 1 lock, it's going to be very weak. If it's if it's an inferior lock, it's going to be very weak. If it's a common lock, it's going to be weak. If it's a complex lock, it's going to be sturdy. That just made sense to me. Now, you might look at it and say, you know what? I like the idea of having a level 1 lock that is actually mighty or strong or very strong. Well, that's your game design choice. You can do that. It's easy enough to just insert more positions into your array. So that's how I went with it, right? So now the text describing the strength of the mechanical or the magic lock is essentially set by the level. And then last is the hit points, right? Object HP for hit points. And as a reminder to myself in these comments, number based on object type, size, quality, and material. So the material, the quality, and the size are going to impact how much hit points the object has. And chests would have less hit points than doors. And then I told myself if I assign it a hit point of 0, that means it's unbreakable. That means you can beat on it all you want, but you're not going to break it open. Okay, so that was my comment. And I did the comments first. I worked through all the comments. I got all the values in before I ever started programming the event because that just seemed to make more sense. So now, how does this work? Well, I'm going to go through each one of those array positions and towards the end it kind of skips a little bit because it makes more sense to do some pieces together rather than separately. In the beginning, they all start separately. So the first thing I do is I set a control variable for the object type number 1, which is chest, variable 301. For these purposes, I didn't need to do that. I just did it. I didn't really need to do that because it was already set in the array by the blah 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 by the event itself, right? So and this common event is specific for chest, and I'm gonna have a different one for door. So this can actually be established, and it's not gonna hurt anything. When I originally conceived of this, I was trying to figure out if I could use one common event to do and then have it choose between chest and door, and I think I kind of moved away from that. But anyway, so then the next thing it does is it says, you know what, let's establish the hit points of this thing. And I just arbitrarily said that the average chest would have 100 hit points. Just pulled that out, and it doesn't have to stay that way. I just decided that. And then my door would have more hit points than that. So then it says, okay, what's my next thing I really need to figure out about the array? And that's the object size. So variable 303 is randomly looking at a value from 1 to 6. And again, so the variable name, random 1 to 6. And then what I did here, I put in a comment because I wanted to remember that what I'm going to do is, depending on the size, I'm going to modify the hit points. So the object size multiplier, if it's a tiny chest, it's 0.25, which means it's actually going to reduce the hit points. It's going to reduce it to a quarter of what it was, right? A fourth. If it's 0.5, then it's going to cut it in half. So it's going to, this one would be 25, this would be 50. If it's 1, it's going to basically stay the same. If you multiply something by 1, it's the same value. If it's larger, it's going to be multiplied by 1.25, which means it's going to increase the size of it's going to increase the hit points. So it's going to increase it by a fourth, right? So it's going to be like 125. 1.5, it's going to increase it by a half again. So it'd be 150. And then if it's 2, it's going to double it. So it'll be 200. And so again, that's how and again, just for testing purposes, right? You could do whatever you wanted to with these values, whatever made sense for you. And further testing, when I get into this, I might find that these values don't work so well, and I want to tweak them. So we're trying to figure out what this variable is going to be, and then so we go into a series of 6 conditional branches. So first conditional branch, if object size number is equal to 1, so random 1 to 6, if it's 1, then it's going to do 2 things. It's going to set the text for object size, variable 304, to tiny, and then it's going to take that multiplier and it's going to multiply it to the variable 329 for object HP. So it's modifying the object's hit points as we go through this common event. Okay, so now this would be, instead of 100, if it's a 1 here, then the HP is going to be 25. And then what I did was I simply copied this and pasted it 5 more times, right? So right click, copy, and then you click where you want it and you paste it, right? And once I pasted it 5 times, I just changed the value here. So change this to a 2, to a 3, to a 4, to a 5, right? So you click on it, edit, change it, right? Change the number. And then I just changed the text, the string, right? From tiny to small. And I changed the multiplier to 0.5. For this one, I changed the number here. I changed the string text, and then I deleted the HP, the object HP, because it's a value of 1, so it's not actually changing it at all. So there's no reason to multiply. For this one, I changed it to a 4, changed the text to large, and then changed the multiplier to 1.5, and did the same thing for each one of these. See? So once I got to 6, it was all done. Then I was like, okay, what's next? What's the next part of the array that we need to figure out? And that was the object quality. So variable 305, object quality number, random from 1 to 6. I kept the multipliers the same. So the object quality is also going to affect the object hit points by a multiplier, which I left the same as this multiplier. And then, again, 6 conditional branches. And when I built it, what I did was I just basically copied this to here, copied this, pasted it, and then I just quickly changed this variable, right? Edited it, changed it to the variable I wanted. The 1 to 6 was the same, multiplier was the same. And then the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 was the same. All I had to do was change the variable. And the nice thing about doing that is when you do this sort of thing and you're changing it, once you select a variable, it remembers what it was. So when I'm here, if I actually navigate to this and I click OK, the next time I do it, when I click here, it's going to stay on that text. And I can just click OK, click OK, click OK as I'm changing multiple things. So you change the variable, then you change this variable and you change the text. This variable stays the same because you're doing the multiplier. And then here you can do the same thing, right? Or you, instead of copying and pasting above, you could just manually do conditional branch 1, and then you copy and paste that 5 more times. And you just make the necessary changes, make the the text changes and the multiplier changes. Okay, so 0.25, 0.5, 3. It has no change because I said that a medium size common chest was the average, right? That's the average. So I'm not changing that hit point at all. And then if it's a 4, it's fine, 1.25. If it's 5, it's superior, 1.5. And if it's 6, magnificent, and multiplied by 2. So that finishes up that part of the array. So then it goes on, it goes from size to, what was that? Quality. So from size to quality, then it goes to material. And so again, control variable 307, object material number, random 1 to 10. Now my multipliers, the way I did this was I looked up, when I brainstormed my list of chest materials, I also looked up how strong those materials were. And there's different ways of looking at strengths of different things like metals and things. And I ultimately just decided from very simple internet research that I was going to take one way of determining strength. And as you can see here, some of the materials have very similar strengths. And that's fine. I just wanted a lot of different options for chest materials. So to me, I don't care if 3 of them, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right, have the same multiplier. I really didn't care. So I set my multiplier. comment, right? Just to remember what I'm doing. And then I made 10 conditional branches, right? Make the first one, object material number equals 1, and this is the default. So wood, I said default is wood. So that's not going to change the hit points at all. But then with if it's a 2, then you do your object material text from wood to lead, and then you do your object hit point multiplier, right? So it's increasing the amount of hit points that the chest has because it's made of lead instead of wood. And again, you can tweak these values to your heart's content, whatever makes sense for you. And you do that a total of 10 times. So you're changing the text for the material, right, what it's made out of, and you're changing whatever the modifier to the hit points are. You go all the way through, get all the way through 10, and then you move. Okay, what's the next thing in the array? And that was the flavor text. So variable 309 object flavor number equals random 1 to 6. Again, I said I just randomly chose 6 different descriptors. You could have far more. Made 6 conditional branches. So if it's a 1, then it's worn. If it's 2, it's plain. If it's 3, it's moss covered. Okay, and went all the way through and got to the end there. And now again, I'll just repeat that. You know, this is a lot of this is just for testing, right? Didn't spend an inordinate amount of time doing this. And the other thing is, this is all equally weighted, right? This is all equally weighted. So in reality, when I implement this, I am going to build in the fact that as you're determining these things, it's going to affect later on. It's going to affect things later on, because does it really make sense for a small, inferior wood chest to have like, a magical and mechanical lock and a magical and mechanical trap at the highest levels with the highest strength? I mean, maybe it could, maybe, but that would probably be the exception rather than the most common thing, right? So, and then I also want these to be influenced by, say, the map you're on, where you are, right? Makes a difference between if you're in a castle with a powerful mage that might be hiding something really valuable and have lots of magic at their disposal than it is if you're in a commoner's house, right? Or if you're in an abandoned shack or something. So I will say, just for testing purposes, all of these random determinations they are equally weighted. They all have an equal chance of happening, and they don't influence each other. They don't affect each other, right? So the fact that just the fact that the way the chest is as far as the description goes doesn't impact the likelihood that it's going to be locked or trapped or whatever. That's an area that would really warrant more more attention. All right, and when I expand upon this, that's what I'm going to do. So now we've gotten through all of really the descriptor stuff, right? What does it look like? The size, the material, the quality, and flavor text. So now we have to get into the locks and traps. And this is where we kind of start combining some of the elements of the array together. So the first thing I did was I tried to keep it in order of the array. And then once I got to a certain point, I was like, oh, wait, it makes more sense to add this part of the array values to this part of the common event. So they get a little out of order here. So for the lock, started with the lock, control variable 311, lock value number equals 0 to 3, right? So either not locked, right? Mechanical, magic, or both. If it's a 0, then this is really simple, right? If the lock value number is 0, that means there's no locks of any type. So you're just setting the value of all these appropriate variables relating to the lock to the equivalent of none, right? So the variable 312 lock value text is not locked. So you can display that to the player when you need to. Variable 319, lock level mechanical number 0. variable 320 lock level mechanical text equals none. The strength is none. The lock level magic number is 0. The text is none. The strength is none, right? So whatever you name these variables, whatever makes sense to you, you just make sure you get all of your appropriate lock variables, and you are setting them to the equivalent of it doesn't have a lock, right? So that was easy. Yay, very simple. So that's if it has a value of 0. If it has a value of 1, then we've got to determine quite a few things. So if the value is 1, meaning it has a mechanical lock, you're going to change the value of variable 312 to has a mechanical lock. The 321 variable is the level of the magic number, right? Because now you're going to take, remember, if it's a 1 here, right, it only has a mechanical lock. So you're going to take all of your magic variables and you're going to assign them the equivalent of none, right? 0, none, and none, because it does not have a magical lock. So now this is saying it has a magical lock. And now what you're going to do is you're going to take your variable 319 magic level mechanical number, and you're going to figure out, okay, what's the level of the mechanical lock that it has? Variable random 1 to 6. And this is where you have 6 nested conditional branches. So you have a conditional branch here if lock value is 1, and then underneath that, right, not at the same level because it's indented, right? It's indented here. It's nested conditional branches. You're going to have 6 nested conditional branches to figure out the lock level. So if it's a 1, then the variable 320 lock level mech or mechanical text is inferior. And then the associated strength, variable 327, is very weak. And you do that 5 more times. Again, you can copy and paste and just change the values you need. Change this to a 2, change the word, and you're done. So you just keep copying and pasting. So if it's a 2, common weak. If it's a 3, complex sturdy. If it's a 4, superior strong. If it's a 5, elaborate very strong. If it's a 6, intricate mighty. And then that's the end of that option. So if it was a 1, right, if your lock level value number is 1, then you're going to determine these things. Then the next possibility is it could have a value of 2. So if lock level number if lock level number is equal to 2, then that means it has a magic lock and no mechanical lock. So you change this variable to has a magic lock. Then you find your variables having to do with mechanical lock, and you set them to the equivalent of none, 0, none, none. And then you take your control variable, 321, or whatever you have for your variable, lock level magic number, 1 to 6. This is just what we did with the mechanical option. And then you have 6 nested conditional branches. And uses the same language. If it's a value of 1, then the lock level magic text is inferior, and the lock strength magic text is very weak. So, one of the things you could do to save time is you could copy and paste the 6 conditional branches from the lock area, but then you just have to remember that you have to change the variable from lock level mechanical number to lock level mag or magic number, and then you have to change these variables from lock level mechanical text to lock level magic text. But these values stay the same. It all depends on what's easier for you and what's more efficient. Just make sure that you change everything you need to change. This comment event requires attention to detail. So you're going to do those 6 nested conditional branches to identify the description of the magic lock level and the magic strength, lock strength. And that's going to end that one. Now, the last option for the lock value is the 3 one, where it has both a mechanical and a magic lock. And honestly, all of this here, okay, all of that is essentially the two previous sections combined. So if it had a value of 0, then it had no mechanical or magic locks, and so all the variables that were applicable were set to the equivalent of 0, none. If it was a 1, then it did it for the mechanical locks, and if it was a 2, it did it for the magic locks. If it's a 3, since it's both, it's really the two previous sections just copied and pasted down here to save yourself some time. So this variable changes to has both a mechanical and magic lock. Then this is repeated. All of this is repeated from the lock part above. You take the lock level mechanical number 1 to 6, and then the lock level text, then the lock strength text. These are all exactly the same as what they were from the previous section with the lock, if it has a lock. And then you go right into the magic lock, right? Because it has both. And this is just essentially the exact same as it was in the previous section for if it had just a magical lock. So you can copy and paste it and just make sure all of your variables are right, all your wording's right, all your numbers are right. So you have the random determination of the lock level magic number, and then you have the 6 conditional branches, right, to set the description values. And then that's it for the lock options. And then for the trap, it's going to essentially be exactly the same as the lock, but you're just changing the variables, right? You're changing the actual variables that you're using. And maybe a little bit of the language changes, but not much. So we go into the traps now. Variable 313, trap value number, random 0 to 3. That was pretty much the same as the lock. And then if it's a 0, right, that's pretty much the same as the lock one. You set all of these variables dealing with trap to the equivalent of 0, none, and you say is not trapped, just like is not locked, is not trapped. Then you do, well, what if it's a 1? If it's a value of 1, this is all pretty much the same as the lock one. You're just changing the variables. Instead of lock value number, it's trap value number. Right? Instead of lock value text, it's trap value text. And you're saying has a mechanical trap. And then because this is a 1, meaning it has a mechanical trap, just like you did with the lock section previously, you're going to take all the trap magic ones and you're going to set them to the equivalent of none, 0, none, 0, none. Then you take the variable for your trap mechanical type number, 1 to 3, and then you make your conditional branches. And again, I just made up the ones: poison needle, sleep dart, acid spray, right? And you're putting the text in there. And then, in addition to that, though, you need the trap level, right? So you've got the trap type, but now you need the trap level. So trap level mechanical number is random 1 to 6, so variable 323. And then you have your 6 nested conditional branches, right? Very similar to the previous section for the locks. And then, if it's a 1, variable 324 is set to inferior. And if it's a 2, common, 3, complex. And you get all the way through your 6 nested conditional branches, and that's it for that section, that little portion. And then you have to repeat it all for if it's a value of 2, right? If it's a value of 2, that means it has a magic trap, not a mechanical trap. So you just reverse everything. You flip everything, right? You can copy and paste it if you want to, but then you just have to go through and change these variables if you're copying pasting, changing them from magic to mechanical, 0, none, 0, none. Then you change this from mechanical, trap mechanical type, to trap magic type, 1 to 3. And then you have your 3 conditional branches, right? Firebomb, ice bomb, ice bomb, ice bomb, acid bomb. Then you've got to do your level, right? Your trap level, and 1 to 6. And this is exactly the same wording as it was for the mechanical trap level section above. So you can copy and paste that. You just got to remember to change, right, the variables that are appropriate from mechanical to mag or magical. And then once that's done, right? So the 0 was none, 1 was mechanical, 2 was magic. Then with the trap value of 3, right? It's the same that you had to do with if the lock value was 3. You have to essentially take the 2 previous sections, right? For if it has a mechanical trap, or the section if it has a magical trap, and you combine them together. So if it's a 3, variable 314, the trap value text has both a mechanical and magic trap. The trap mechanical type number 1 to 3, and it does its conditional branches, poison needle, sleep dart, acid spray. Then what I did here was I kind of took it out of order a little bit from the section above. I went from trap mechanical type to trap magic type. So I had them one right after the other. Again, 1 to 3, 3 conditional branches, firebomb, ice bomb, acid bomb. Then it determined the level of each one. So it went to variable 323, trap level mechanical number 1 to 6, and it had its 6 conditional branches, which inferior, common use the same words. And then it went right into the trap level magic number random 1 to 6, and it's the exact same wording, inferior, common, complex. So you can copy and paste again. You just got to remember to change the variables that you're using, right? If you copy and paste, you just got to pay attention to detail to change every single variable that you need to change. And then that's the end of this comment event. So again, in the beginning, you take some time. In a comment, you describe out everything, right? The positions of your array that you're using. I purposely chose to use the variable names here. It might have been even more helpful if I used the variable numbers as well. That might have even helped me out more, especially when you end up with, like, say, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 variables. But I just didn't think of it at the time. But it might have been helpful, like I said, to put the variable numbers in here, as well as the way the variable names are. And I brainstormed the values. So when I go back to change this, I will tweak these and then change the lower parts. And then it went through right in pretty much in an order until it got to the locks and traps, and then it kind of merged a little bit, right, in the different sections where it made sense. And again, it changed the object hit point as it went through based on the size, quality, and material. So, which is why if you get really high values, you could have really high hit points. Or if you get really low values, you could have really low hit points for the object. And that's pretty much it. The one thing I would say is a couple things here. I guess I'll just repeat it. If you decide to recreate this, and then as you're doing it, kind of make it your own, tweak things and things like that, I would just say, watch very carefully that you're using the variable that you need to use at the right time. If you're copying and pasting, make sure you're changing all the values that you need to change, and watch for your conditional branches. Most of the conditional branches in this common event are not nested, right? They're not nested. There's only certain sections in here where you have conditional branch and then a conditional branch under that. So you be careful with the structure of your conditional branches. And if you notice, nowhere in this common event is there an else branch or an else option, right? So when you go here, right, you have this create else branch. None of these have an else branch anywhere in here because you don't need it. It works without it. Okay, so that's the common event, and went through the chests, right? So again, create an array, unique array for that for that event. Call the common event. Common event does its magic. Come back here, and in this massive script block, right, you take all the values of the variables from the common event, push them, add them to your array, and you really need to do it in order, right? Because you need to know where those values are in the right position so you can extract them, right? You got to be organized like that. And then this is just for testing purposes. It's actually telling you what the values were so you can make sure that when you go to page 2 and it's supposed to be remembering it, it does it correctly. And then here, the big thing is you're taking the values from the array that you created and you're setting those values back to those reusable variables that are from the common event so that you can temporarily use them while you're interacting with the chest and you're trying to unlock it or inspect it or cast magic on it or break it open or whatever. And then again, I'll just reiterate in what I'm going to have to go back and do is I'm going to have to go back in and add all of the numbers associated with these. I just did the text for testing purposes, but I really would need to add the number value ones too, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to be more likely to use those in next steps. And if you don't call them back from the array, then you're going to end up using the wrong value, right? You can't just plug the variable in because you could have interacted with 4 chests and you're going to get the value of the last chest you interacted with unless you reset the value for this particular event to the array that you want to use, right? And just make sure that when you're duplicating these chests, you change the array values, right? You got to change the value of the array that you created, not the position, right? 3, 5, 7, 9, not the position, but the actual value of the array. And that's all I can think of, right? So this one has a different array, and so this one changed. This value changed in the array. And then on this one, this one changed, right, for the array. So anyway, I hope that helps, folks. I will try when I have time to do the tutorial for the other teaser that I did, which was the on-screen blacksmithing, right? And I did add some features to that, and I probably have some more to add. But I just want to share what I've built so far, in the hope that this helps you in your discovery, right? If you're trying to do things, and this will help you build other things and stuff like that. So again, hope this is helpful. If you do find that these videos are helpful, or if you at least appreciate the time and effort that goes into these, like I said, this is my second time trying to do this on this particular one, so I'm investing quite a bit of time here. Please consider liking, subscribing, getting notifications, leaving comments. I do try to respond to all comments that I get. If you have a question about anything in here, if you try to build it and it isn't working right, feel free to leave a comment, reach out for help. I will do my best to help you. If you have suggestions, if you have requests, if you know that there's a better way to do this, by all means, leave a comment. Again, I will eventually explore plugins and things like that, and hopefully I'll get to a point at some point in time where I can make my own plugins, but we'll see. That's a long time down the road. And then essentially in the meantime, hopefully, this is going to be good for you. And, again, happy to get feedback, and I'll try to get more videos up. And hopefully I didn't make a mistake on this one that I can't fix or something. So hopefully I didn't do that. All right. Well, thanks a lot, folks. I'm glad you found me. Hope these are helpful. And in between now and when I can get something else posted, happy gaming, happy game developing. If you haven't checked out rpgmakerweb.com and the forums over there, great place to go. A lot of things you can learn over there. So again, thanks a lot, folks, and I will see everyone later. Bye.